Good afternoon and welcome back to the Mindful Model Maker. We're away in the motorhome and I've decided to start building the Locoremote Planet motor truck. I've had it a little while, but I decided that I needed to start building. The one I decided to go for, you've got two options. You can have a square box or you can have the tipper wagon type, the hopper. It comes with all the pieces, very lovely motor and gearbox like so. And what I'm going to do, there are full instructions that are downloadable that come with it. You can see that there's the battery. It's a LiPo battery, 3.7 volt. The instructions are very clear. They're downloadable and you can just sit there and read them, but I just thought that I would do a live demonstration of doing the wiring and building the model as well, for some people that prefer that. So it's entirely up to you what you prefer. I've got a couple of batteries. I've got loads of these batteries now. Also, when you look at when you go on Locoremote, he also tells you there's a company on eBay that does very inexpensive LiPo batteries which are to go on drones. So you get 4 batteries, a charger, all very cheap. So it's very useful website, the Locoremote one. So you can have a look at that at any time and you'll see all the bits. So these are all the parts that I've got. What we're going to do today is, on this first bit, is deal with cutting all the wires to wire up, because it's pretty compact underneath, as you can see. So everything has to be the right length, otherwise you get bulk of wire cable that's going all over the place. So that's the actual radio control bit, the actual Locoremote bit, and that's the battery, and that fits underneath the wagon. Now the only bit you don't get with it is the man that sits in his control bit, but it also gives you the email address of the company that makes that. I've got one on order. By the time we get back from this trip, it should be where I live, and I can show you. It's a seated figure which you need. So I'm just going to read off a little bit about this Loco. So this is a Planet 6 horsepower motor driven truck. It was built by a company called FC Hibbert and Co Limited, and it was introduced in the late 1920s as a light locomotive to provide relatively cheap motive power. So this is all on the instructions when you get them. So I've not researched this, it's just what it's there. The standard model had a flat platform with a wooden box, or the 1 cubic yard tipping body. So this is the one that I've got, the 1 cubic yard tipping body. It's a bit like the binny wagons that you can buy for garden gauge. I've also got track, plastic track that's printed in 16mm for this to run on. So at a later stage, once we've got this built running, I have got track that we can run it on. So what we're going to do now is to disconnect the cables from there, because we need to cut them to length. So I'm just going to put these bits to one side. So what I've done, I've taken some notes. What you need is a really nice steel rule that's quite clear to read. Okay, you might not be able to see all this clearly on here, but if you do buy this Loco kit, you will get the instructions that you can download and it can go for there, but I will tell you what you need. So first of all, this is the black and red wires that connect to the Mini Power B. Now the Mini Power B is this here, so that is the radio control bit. So it's important that you get that bit right, because you can't really get it in the wrong way, because there's a little bit that where it slides in on there So got a little bit sticking up there which goes into a groove in the white bit, so that slides in to give it the power. So that's quite an easy thing to do. So that's got a red and a black wire on. Now the first thing we're going to do is to cut this to length. Now the most important thing is when you measure, it gives you the measurements on the instructions. You can do it for 45mm or you can do it for 16mm. So I'm doing it for 16mm, and all you need to do is do not include the plug in the measurement. So you don't measure from the end of the plug like so, you measure from inside the plug to the end of the wire, and then you cut it to what it needs to be. Okay, right, so we need to do those wires. So both these wires, the red and the black, need to be 45mm long. I'll stick to the metric equivalent to what he says, because most people work in that now. So you can just put the plug at the end of the rule like so, because it's not a ruler, it's a rule, so it's a steel rule. So you can go down, and then where it says 45mm is where you can do your cut. Okay, so all you need is a pair of side cutters, good sharp ones. Come all the way down to where the 45mm is, like so, and just cut. Right, so we've cut through. Now the other thing to remember on this one is when you've cut that through, like so, you need to keep the black wire, because that comes in another part of it later on. So there we are. Now the other thing you do need, I don't know, yes you do get some with it, is some heat shrink. So there's the heat shrink that comes in the pack, because this Loco is also four-wheel drive, and you get the rubber bands to do the four-wheel drive as well. So that's why it's quite a powerful little Loco, even though it's very small and it's only running on 3.7 volts. It's quite powerful. So you've got the heat shrink as well. So we've done the first bit here. The main thing, don't get muddled up with this. The smaller white connector is the one that goes on the Locoremote. The bigger white connector is the one that fits, and you can see that yourself. Have a look through the parts before you start is best. That one is what goes on to the LiPo battery. You can see that going sliding in there. So the one with the small connector goes to the remote, the radio control section of it, and the wider one goes to the battery. Okay, so important not to get them muddled up. Right, so we've cut that to 45mm. Now you get two other wires which are joined together. You need to split them. Now you need the orange wire, so you need to just take them apart. You can just pull them down like so, and then they come apart like that. So you've now got two separate, one orange, one yellow. And it says on here the orange wire needs to be 35mm long. So again, and that's not including the length of the connector. So the connector goes to the end of the steel rule, and then you go down to where it's 35mm, and then that's where you can cut that off. So I've made a mark with my thumb now at 35mm, and I'm now just going to snip that off like so. These need to be a bit sharper, I think. So that's it. Right, so that one's 35. You can just check that it's 35. Put that on there like so, and it comes down, and it's 35mm long. Alright, that's that one. Then we go to the yellow wire, which is only 25mm long. So again, I put that on the end like so, come down where it says 25, press my thumbnail into it so it leaves an indentation. It's just easier to hold it all like that. That's the way I do it. I mean, you can do it whatever way you feel is safest, and then that snips off. Right, so we've got the orange, yellow, and the actual power cable, which will go, so that's the cable that takes the power to the actual remote, and these two wires are cut to size now. So that's that. Now what we've got to look at next is where these bits go. So that's the important thing. First of all, I'm going to put the wires on to the motor bit. So what happens on that, I'm just going to cheat a bit, so I'm going to go down and have a look what it looks like when it's on there. Right, okay. So it's the longer wire, so that was the orange wire that's going to go to the motor. So you hold the motor up so that the motor's at the top, the gearbox is at the bottom. The orange wire goes to the top of the motor, and the yellow wire goes to the bottom. Okay, so what you need to do then is to just nibble off a little bit of that, so there's a little bit of wire sticking out. Just don't go too thin, because if you cut through that, it's going to make it shorter. So this is where a knife may be better than using cutters. So I'm just snipping off the end of that like so. And then what we'll do on the next bit is solder these parts on. So the orange one is going to go to the top with the motor up there, and then the yellow wire is going to the one below. So that shows you that part. So I'm going to keep it quite easy. So all I'm going to do is just these two at the moment, and then we've got to have a look at the next little bit that we've got to do. So I'm just snipping off the end of that. That's it. I can do it with my thumbnail because it's quite long, and the wire. So there's the yellow wire. So yellow wire is going to the bottom. So that'll just slip in there like so, and then all we need to do is put a little touch of solder on there to hold that onto there like so. Alright, so that's how that bit will go. So I'm just prepping these bits up. Then the next thing we need to find is the switch. Just get a little bit more complex with the switch. But once you've found it, there she is. Right, so it's a switch. It's an on-off switch. Now, it doesn't say anything in, as far as I can find, in there. I'm just going to slide that up and down. Go back full size with that. So I'm looking down on the laptop here just to make sure that I'm telling you the right thing. There we go. Right. It says locate the on-off switch, power cables and thicker heatsink tubing. Cut one outer tab off the switch. So cut one outer tab off of the switch. And the tab holes are small, and you may wish to widen them. So this is the switch. Okay, you can see it there. It's got 3 underneath, so you can get rid of any one of the outer. So there's 2 outer, 1 is in, but only one of them do you need to get rid of, because you need 1 outer and the middle one. Okay, so that needs to be cut off. So I think it's so that it doesn't get in the way of anything else. So I'm just going to remove that like so. I'm just going to snip that. Be careful what you do. That's it. That's snipped off. So I've now just got 2 on there. So as long as you've got 1 outer and the centre one, you're okay. It doesn't matter which way you do it, which outer one you get rid of. Be careful when you snip it off, because you don't want to wrench it all about and it breaks it up underneath and you lose the contact when the switch slides from one side to the other, because obviously this does play an important part. Right, the next thing is you want to just have a look now what we need to do. Right, so first of all we go back to the actual two wires on the connector that goes to the actual radio control. So it's the one with the small connector to it. Okay, and then what you need to do with that is just trim off a little bit at the end so that you can solder that on. One goes to the switch and one goes through to another cable. So basically the two reds, the red from the LiPo lead, it's coming off now. I'm just reluctant to cut it with the snippers really, because I think that if I do that and I snip the wire too short, that's it. So I've now got a little bit of wire coming through there like so. Right, so on this connector that's going to go to the actual radio control unit, that red wire is going to connect to the red wire on the LiPo lead, which is that wider one. So them two need soldering together. So I just need to make that a tiny little bit better than what it is. That's it. I've just trimmed a little bit more on that off, like so. I'm just going to cut off that little piece of plastic that's sticking in the way there. So let's get that like that. That's got that nearly done. And then they've got the black. I'm just going to just nibble around that black a little bit, just to get it through to the wire, but not cut hard. That's it. I've got rid of the black now. So I've bared off the two ends of that. So this is the one that goes to the Locoremote. The one that goes to the battery is already bared off. Now what we need to do then is to get hold of some of the heat shrink. Now we've got to use that on a couple of the wires, so we need to chop a little bit of that off. So you can use your cutters for that. I think I must buy myself a new pair of cutters actually, because these have nearly had it, but I've had them a long time and they've had to cut through some pretty hard stuff. So right, so I've done 2 bits of heat shrink. Now what you need to do with that is already slide it on, because once you've soldered this on, you need to, once you've soldered the 2 bits together, you then need to slide the heat shrink back over the joint. And the reason for that is so it doesn't short out on any other part, and it could cause something to not work properly. So what we need to do is to solder the 2 red parts together on that. So you've got, this is the power lead, so you've got the power lead there, so the 2 reds go together, and then the black lead from the battery goes on to an extra bit of black wire. So that piece of black wire that you cut off earlier on, which should be laying here somewhere, that's a laugh, there she is. It's already got one end of it bared off, so I'll bare off the other. So I'll just nibble round the end of that a little bit, just to kind of gently cut through the plastic sheathing a little bit, and then use my long thumbnail to just pull a bit of that off. That's it. Right, so this is the extend, that's that black bit that we cut off earlier on, when we cut down the bit that goes to the Locoremote, the actual radio control section with the little white connector on, we cut it down so that they're 45mm long. But you keep the black offcut, because that black offcut is going to go onto there, and then that black wire, that's it, the black wire will go up from there. So no, I'm wrong there. So the black wire joins to the black wire on the battery to make that longer. Right, so we got it now. So now that goes on to there. The heat shrink is already over that. The only piece of heat shrink we need is for that one. So the red goes to there, and then the switch, which we've got here, so the middle one goes to the black on there. So that goes to there, and this one, the red joins the red and the black goes to there. So that's roughly how it will go. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just break off. I'm going to solder these together, and then once I've soldered them together, I will show you in more detail, and perhaps I'll try and get it closer up what it looks like when it's done. And then we'll go on to put the wires. I may solder the wires on while I'm doing that onto the motor section as well. And then we get to test it, because obviously that's the most important bit. So that's what we need to do. So just a quick recap. We start off by the two wires here that go to the Locoremote. The Locoremote is the radio control section with the small white connector. Has a red and a black wire. They are cut to 45mm in length. The black piece that's left over when you cut that off also goes then to join on to the LiPo connector to make that long enough, and then that will go join, solder on, heat shrink over the top, shrink the heat shrink, and then that will solder to the on-off switch. Then what we do is the two red wires just connect straight together. So the red wire on the radio control and the red wire on the LiPo battery connector go there, and the black wire for that goes to the middle terminal. So the outside terminal goes to the LiPo, and the inside terminal goes to the motor, and that's what switches the whole thing on and off. So that bit is relatively simple. It might seem complicated at the moment. Like I say, you get downloadable instructions, and you get me doing this, and also when I've soldered this I will show you exactly what it looks like, so hopefully it will become clearer then if it's not at the moment. Right, so that's the end of this first video on how to wire up the Locoremote Planet motor truck. So I'm just going to leave you with that now, and like I say, it is all downloadable, but some people like to be shown more than trying to read it themselves. At least with this, if you've got the instructions and you've got me explaining, hopefully between the two you should be able to do it. It is quite simple, and I would imagine that most people that are building this would know how to do this anyway. Right, okay, I'm going to leave it for now, and I'll see you in the next video once all the parts are soldered up. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.